Okay, it's 11:15 Central, so I think we can go ahead and get started. I would like to kick things off by thanking everyone for joining us today for the Research and Market Update with the Omega-9 Oils team. My name is Jennifer Lerner. I'm one of the primary media relations contacts for the canola oil team. I wanted to start with a few administrative notes. If you are a participant and listening in, please make sure to mute your phone line to listen in so that we can make sure that all of the presenters are heard. We are recording this webinar, and it will be available on demand beginning next week. So if there's anything you might miss through the course of the presentation, I'll be sending out a link to everyone who's joining us when it is live. And of course, as always, feel free to reach out to us directly if you do have follow-up questions or anything that comes up through the course of next week. With that, I'd like to introduce today's presenters. David Dyziak is the commercial lead of grains and oils for Dow AgroSciences and our primary spokesperson for this business. David Boer is the group leader for the healthy oils category for Dow AgroSciences, working primarily with food service clients. And then Mary Kay LaGuardia is a market manager for Omega-9 Oils and works primarily with food manufacturing companies. In the interest of time and as a follow-up to this webinar, I'll make sure to send out a short bio information on each of today's presenters for your files. And with that, I will turn it over to David Dyziak to begin the presentation. Dave?
Hey, thank you, and good morning, everybody, and thank you for taking the time to join us here today. So in our Dow AgroSciences is the agricultural business of Dow Chemical, and we've got a large program involved in plant genetics and seed technology, and as a part of that program, since the early or mid-1990s, we've been working around the canola and sunflower crops and developing oils with new functionality. And this was really born out of the need back then as the identification arose to remove trans fats from the food supply, and there was growing awareness that they were harmful to human health. And we looked at this and saw an opportunity to create naturally stable oils that could deliver the functionality to the food industry, deliver a more healthful solution by getting rid of trans and having something that really tasted good at the same time, and something that could be produced at a wide scale. So when we talk about omega-9 oils, there really are oils that are high in monounsaturated fats. And so monounsaturated fat is also the same fatty acid that's primarily found in oils like olive oil and in things like guacamole. So it's it's an unsaturated fat that's got very good features around it. And we have been actively delivering the solution since the mid-1990s. And the omega-9 oils are now widely adopted across the North American food industry. And next slide, please. So our main objective here is to really deliver these in a very reliable way and in a cost-effective way. You know, the North American food industry is a vast user of oil. About 25 billion pounds of oil in total are used across North America in all their different forms and functions. And so to really deliver a solution that can serve the North American food industry, it's really driven out of four main attributes. So one, we have to be able to supply them reliably. And we've got a large plant breeding program that's dedicated around developing these new crops with these new fatty acid profiles. We need to ensure we've got good grower acceptance, and we need to ensure that we've got a good supply chain. So everything from working with producers, working with grain companies to get them off farm, working with the oilseed processors who can convert oilseed into oil and then get that delivered to restaurants and food companies across the continent. So we've got very cost-effective and efficient identity preservation systems. We need to keep this segregated out of commodity canola and sunflower so we can preserve the identity of the crop. And we do this at a large scale today. And we do this through 9 different crushing facilities here in Western Canada and the northern Great Plains of the U.S. Also, what's important, of course, in the food industry is taste. And the good thing about this oil is it has a very clean, light, neutral flavor. And it's preferred by chefs because it doesn't really compete with any kind of sensory that they're trying to deliver, any kind of seasoning packages that they're using, so it really lets the taste of food come through. And the last thing, it really needs to be functional. And so really what we've done through plant breeding is really replace the functionality of partial hydrogenation. And so we made the oil, the plant now makes the oil that's naturally stable. And so we need to deliver that in a consistent fashion. And of course, it has to have these benefits of extended fry life and shelf life as compared to commodity oils. And we've been able to really achieve on those four main attributes as we've developed our business here. Next slide. So what we've done, and there's a lot of numbers on this chart, so let me clear it for you. So across the top, the very first row, starting with oleic and 18-1, oil is a mixture of different fatty acids. And if you change the ratio of those fatty acids, you change the functionality of the oil. And C18-1 means an 18 carbon length fatty acid with one double bond, and linoleic would have two double bonds, and linolenic would have three. And the more double bonds, the more potential there is for an oil to oxidize, so it's less stable. And and we can see the different oils in the first column there as a comparison. And then we've got the total saturated fat content, the trans fat content, and then the total sats and trans level. So the second from the bottom, you would see partially hydrogenated soybean oil. And so 2/3 of all the oil used by the food industry in 2005 was partially hydrogenated. And what you can see there is a relatively high level of trans fat. So 1/3 of that oil at the time was full of trans and saturated fats. And we know from guidance, like from the dietary guidelines for the American Heart Association today, we really want to be consuming oils that have eliminated their trans fat content and are very low in saturated fat content. So to help deliver the functionality, if we compare the Omega-9 canola to commodity canola, those first two rows, you can see that we made an increase in the oleic or the mono and saturated fat content from 61 to 74%. And at the same time, we decreased the linolenic content from 9% to 2%. Now, the 18-3s of the linolenic are about 100 times less stable than the 18-1s. So by making a relatively small move in the 18-3 content, we dramatically increase the stability of the oil. And so that new oil profile that Omega-9 has delivers the same or better functionality than partially hydrogenated soybean oil, but of course with a very low level of sats and a virtually elimination of all the trans. And on the bottom, you can see palmoline or palm oil. And you can see it's also a very essentially zero trans fat solution, but it has a very high level of saturated fat. And despite everything that we've kind of been reading about butter is back, et cetera, and some of those headlines, if you look at the American Heart Association guidance, which is kind of the gold standard for fats in the diet, they still recommend that saturated fat be less than 10% of our caloric intake. Next, please. If we look at adoption of these oils and volume, we've got sort of metrics here on the amount of oil used looking back to 2006. And so over the course of time, we have a sort of a bit of an ebb and flow year to year in the total volume being used. These kind of reflect maybe annual or crop year volumes, and so it doesn't take into account inventory, so the actual use is somewhat smoother. But nevertheless, we can see that out of all the different options available, like New Sun or low linolenic soy or potentially high oleic soy, the real driver in this naturally stable oil category has been canola. Canola is now the second largest oil used by the North American food industry, and its volume has grown dramatically in the last 5 years. And the main reason for that growth has been the good functionality of these omega-9 type oils, and so they deliver on all those important attributes that we talked about before, and we can do it at scale, et cetera. So it's been a good solution to replace hydrogenated oils. Other crops like New Sun really can't use more modern technology. They're under pressure from crops like corn moving north. And so canola really has been the crop that's been able to deliver the kind of scale needed across the industry today. An important thing, too, is really having a quality, stable oil profile. And so often the environment has an effect on the quality of the oil that's being produced by the plant. And so if the weather is hot, it can produce more saturated fats. If the weather is very cool, it can produce more of the 18.3 content, which is, of course, a more unstable fraction of the oil. But through some very sophisticated plant breeding, we've been able to really develop hybrids or varieties of these omega-9 canolas that have a very reliable oil profile. And so we've been able to really get the genetics set so that the environment has a very minimal impact on the fatty acid profile. And that's a very important attribute for the food industry. And so when they want to adopt something, their quality specifications are often quite narrow and certainly quite rigorous. And so we've got the ability across a broad range of agricultural environments, hot, cold, wet, dry, et cetera. We can still be independent of that and produce a very consistent oil profile for our customers. An important part, too, is having the ability to minimize environmental risk. If you are dealing with a smaller crop and maybe over a narrower geography, you bring an environmental risk, from a localized drought or a hailstorms, et cetera. People don't often realize how large the canola belt is. And as a comparison, you can see that across the Canadian prairies, if you go from the southeast corner in Winnipeg to the northwest corner just past Edmonton, it's about the same distance as going from Minneapolis to Dallas. So, canola has tripled in size in the course of the last 10 years, and really being driven by these need for new functional oils. And as you can see, it covers a wide swath of the upper Great Plains through North Dakota and all across the Canadian prairies. And we've created a very important supply chain. And so we have a lot of folks in our network that perform, of course, vital functions. And so what we focus on as Dow AgroSciences is around plant breeding, ensuring we've got high-quality seed. We have a network of over 3,500 farmers that participate in the seed program and growing these varieties into contracts for grain companies and processors. The grain companies collect buy the oil seed from growers at harvest, and then it goes into the oil processors. We've got 9 processors that are involved in our program today. So we've got a very kind of large scale, a lot of variety oil sources available, and that really goes out then primarily to food service operators across the continent and to consumer packaged goods companies across North America. And we also have a fairly significant customer base in Japan and growing in Mexico today. So we've got a well-developed system and a very good supply chain worked out that goes right from seed in the bag all the way out to oilseed processing.
Thanks, Dave. So now we will hand it over to David Boer, who's going to talk about the results of some recent consumer research that we conducted. Dave?
Thanks, Jen. As we look at the next slide, we'll go ahead and roll in a little bit on our consumer preference research testing that we did. And the next couple of slides are going to tee up the reasoning behind this research. And we know that consumers are using various factors when making decisions about the foods they purchase. And we wanted to dive a little more deeply into this. several pieces of data from the IFIC study, which is an annual study that's produced by the International Food Information Council, kind of served as our driver behind this. So as you look at the slide that's on the screen now, and it's really, what are the dietary fats and oils decisions that people are looking at, and as you look at, as we can imagine at the top, very strong. People are still concerned about, overall fats in a product, trans fats and saturated fats, and when 1 in 5 consumers is considering omega-9 fats when making a purchase decision, and this has stayed fairly constant over the past few years, and omegas as a whole obviously continue to drive quite a bit of attention. As we look at kind of how consumers rate fats and oils, and we're really looking at the perception of healthiness here. And so at the top of the scale there, much like what we talked about the last slide, omega-3, 6, and 9. So the omega halo is very appeasing to consumers. So they rate fairly high as far as the overall healthfulness. The disconnect a little bit, though, is the difference between that and then consumers what they would rank monos and polys. A couple of categories down. So, omega-3, 6, and 9 are omega-3s and 6s are polyunsaturated fat, omega-9 monounsaturated fat, but the consumer, I don't think, makes the connection between the two there. So the perception and healthiness is a little different. And then as you look at the bottom of that category, again, much like what Dave mentioned, despite the recent press that saturated fats may have some differing opinions, people still looking at trans, saturated, and then further processed oils like partially hydrogenated, and interesterified is significantly less helpful. And really what we look at here is kind of that key information on the nutrition facts panel and what are people really looking at to help drive their purchase decisions. And, these are all very high ranking from very helpful to somewhat helpful, and a lot of them is, based around the, kind of the base figures that are in that. But there's a lot of different fat options that are on here, from total fat to different varying types of fat. And so the study that we did just kind of lays out the study design. I'm really looking at U.S. household grocery shoppers. We had a sample size of about 1,000 people, and we were really tried to break it up from a demographic standpoint too, so that we had a really broad distribution that kind of matched the normal shopping base in the U.S. So, and really, as we talked about perceptions on an earlier slide, this is a very good representation of that. So, as we looked at, the question was asked to basically, rank the following oils from the healthiest to least healthy on overall category here. So, as we look and as we expected, oils like canola and sunflower rank very high. From a healthful perspective amongst most consumers. The perception piece kind of comes in where we look at, coconut. So if we looked at this study maybe 2 years ago, coconut probably wouldn't even have been a category or an oil that was choosed. And this year, consumers, despite the fact that coconut's 87% saturated fat, have a perception that it's healthy. And, we saw previous slides that showed that people had a significant concern or even trying to stay away from saturated fat. So I think that's why we look at the perception piece there. Palm oil, again, no big surprise that it was perceived as one of the more unhealthy oils on the ranking list there. Consumers, again, increasingly seeking information via product labels. And so we asked a couple questions around, do they seek, omega-labeled fats and oils in products, or are they looking specifically for products that contain omega-3s, 6s, or 9s? And, about half the consumers said they do and look for that, and they are subsequently buying those products. So not only is it important that it's in there, it affects their purchase intent. And then also another question would you want to know on the front of the product that the product contained lower levels in saturated fat? So instead of looking behind at the nutritional panel, did they want to know that it had it in there? And there was a 75% preference there that would like to see it on the front of pack. So people are looking to be more and more informed on the front end of the decision-making process. And comparative preferences and origins. So as we get a lot of questions around, kind of the origin of a product, or people just want to know more and more about the products that they consume, we start to get, some questions about, where is a product grown. So we wanted to look at a question that kind of addressed the differences in growing regions and what does it mean to a consumer based upon a couple types of oils. And so we looked at canola oil grown in the U.S. versus soybean oil grown in the U.S., canola oil grown in Canada versus soybean oil grown in the U.S. And despite, regardless of origin, canola oil was preferred over soybean oil. There is a slight preference if you look at the bar or the bar chart on the top versus the bottom of canola oil grown in the U.S., but overall the preference would be for canola oil over soybean oil regardless of origin. And the importance of GMO verification. So we gave the consumer kind of a brief snippet or paragraph that you can read there, and it gives them some background about the non-GMO project verification project. And this is an independent verification project for non-GMO foods and a lot of other different categories. So basically, it goes through and verifies consensus-based standards that include GMO risk assessment, traceability, segregation, and kind of testing at key control points throughout the process. And so ask the question to the consumers, is it important that these foods have some type of third-party verification versus, just some type of individual branding or marketing from a food company? And a strong majority of the shoppers believe that it is very important that it does contain this verification at a 73% level, and so that's a pretty high level for people to think that it's that important. And along with that, they wanted to see, we wanted to understand, how that affect purchase intent. So we asked a question, and if the product displayed the non-GMO project seal, which they have a very specific seal, it's a butterfly, has some language around it, but if the project that they're looking at buying contained that, would they be more likely to buy that product if displayed? So that's always something that's very important as we look at, how people market their products, is really how does it affect purchase intent. As you can see here, 65% of the shoppers said that they're more likely to buy the product, and that actually increases with those that would be in the kind of the health seekers category, or those that shop at specialty type markets. And along with the clean label and the people that are really wanting to know more and more about their food, we asked a question related to preservatives in products. And and without not a big surprise, that 63% of the shoppers said that they would prefer a product without preservatives, mainly citing health concerns, being unhealthy, unnatural, or possibly, unsafe, or have an undesirable chemical and additive in it. And we receive quite a few questions in the last, 6 months to a year with regards to how can we help organizations take out some of these preservatives in their products, and especially related to the fats and oil side of the equation. And as Dave Dyziak mentioned, by the way we have been able to change up the fatty acid profile in our product, Omega-9 Canola can really help food companies help remove products like TBHQ, which is a preservative in their product labels, take that off because we are a naturally stable product, and in many instances we don't require any additional preservatives or the use of TBHQ. Helps those food companies achieve a much cleaner label.
Excellent, Dave. Thank you. So we wanted to pause here for any questions from our listeners. We know that was quite a bit of data, so we wanted to check in there before we went to our second half of the webinar and yet another research session. Okay. Well, if there's no questions, we'll keep moving, and then feel free, if you do think of one, feel free to, I'll send contact information for afterwards, and you can send them to us directly. So with that, I will move it over to Mary LaGuardia, who will present the next portion of our webinar. Mary?
Yes, thanks, Jen. So our second research study is about the snack food category. And on average, Americans get 25% of daily calories from snacks. Americans are shifting away from the distinct 3 meals per day pattern and have a variety of reasons for snacking. Some are seeking wellness and are actually looking for specific ingredients in their snack food. They're looking for fewer ingredients. Absence of negatively perceived ingredients, such as no trans fats, no artificial colors, no flavors, artificial flavors or preservatives. And snacking is all about impulse, and despite all else, taste remains to be the number one driver of snack choice. Increasingly, consumers are embracing snacks as a way to actually fit into their overall nutrition and fitness goals. And of course, snacking is emotional. It's all about shared family time, and then even sharing virtually via social media. People tweet about what they're eating, and especially moms talk about what they're feeding their families. And snacking is becoming all about influence, or the food's badge value. So what does it stand for? So consumer needs and expectations around snacks have expanded dramatically, and they no longer have to trade off between convenience, health, or taste. Next slide, please. And snacks are a better fit for the millennial lifestyle, which is on the go, very diverse. You know, consumers are finding it much more difficult to sit down to the 3 square meals a day, and this routine is being replaced by snacking. And the millennial generation snacks during meal times. They eat snacks for breakfast, for lunch, for dinner, and are snacking nearly twice as often as any other generation. Next slide, please. And new generation snacks are playing into the demand for wellness, for sharing, for recognizable ingredients, including oils now, are even being called out on front of packaging in many brands. And ready-to-eat popcorn is really hitting on many of the reasons why people snack, and sales of this category have grown dramatically. So this prompted us to research the category shifts and gain insight into the perception of healthy oils in this rapidly growing and changing popcorn category. Next slide, please. So we conducted formal research and online research using research panel of 1,000 participants, which represented all generational buying groups. Primary household shoppers, and the survey was conducted just this past spring, and it was nationally representative, so quotas were established to mirror U.S. Census data. Next slide. And so salty snacks purchased in the last 6 months were tallied, and popcorn products emerged as a frequently purchased item. And popcorn products are the second highest favorite salty snack, behind potato chips, and which is a much larger category. Now, nearly 3/4 of popcorn lovers cite microwave popcorn as their favorite type of popcorn. Next slide. And so we wanted to understand if consumers, view ready-to-eat popcorn and microwave popcorn as being similar, being different. Are they interchangeable? How are they different? So overall, most consumers do perceive differences between microwave and ready-to-eat popcorn, and the key differentiator is freshness. And microwave popcorn is considered to be fresher because it's consumed immediately upon preparation, and taste and flavor is a main differentiator between the two types as well. Next slide, please. So at the outset of our category investigation, we observed differences in marketing claims between the two types, between ready-to-eat and microwave popcorn. And so we're ready to eat features, ingredients, and wellness attributes, and claims with the most influence on purchase of microwave include both a lack of familiar, traditional ingredients to avoid, such as no trans fats, artificial flavors, colors, and preservatives, and the absence of ingredients traditionally deemed as unhealthy were the reasons most cited for influencing purchase intent for microwave versus ready-to-eat. So we asked questions around what types of claims would influence purchase behavior, and the highest claims with oil terms had the words heart healthy, canola oil, and now made with. And this is suggesting that including ingredient messaging around the healthfulness of canola oil just may influence consumers to buy more of their preferred brand of microwave popcorn. Healthy oil messaging had greater impact on purchase intent even over whole grain, non-GMO project verified, and gluten-free claims, which you see occasionally on front of pack messaging. Next slide, please. So on-pack claims now made with heart-healthy canola oil and now made with heart-healthy canola oil can drive half of consumers to increase popcorn purchase frequency. Canola oil in general was viewed as a heart-healthy ingredient or was preferred over other oils, including palm oil, which is the predominant oil used in microwave popcorn today. Replacement of palm, we tested other claims and we tested switching and replacement types of messaging, and replacement of palm oil with canola oil rated higher than replacing palm oil with sunflower oil or corn oil. So marketing the positive attributes of oil is preferred to the replacement messaging. Slide, please. And consumers expect oil changes to positively impact the nutritional quality of microwave popcorn. So when asked the question, if oil in your microwave popcorn was changed to oil which is better for you overall, how do you think the popcorn will change, if at all? And so nearly half would expect a more nutritious product. But on the all-important attributes of flavor and aroma, 40% expect no change in those attributes, and just 13% would expect less flavor and aroma, and 18 to 22% would expect more flavor and aroma. And consumers responded similarly to texture and oiliness attributes. So this is a really strong indicator that consumer perception of microwave popcorn made with healthier oil would not change the product experience, why people consume it. Next slide, please. So the impact of a healthy oil change. Claims with healthy oils resonate more with consumers than ingredient and other health-related claims that are currently on pack. Claims about popcorn made with heart-healthy and omega-9 canola oil drive over 50% purchase intent. Consumers feel microwave popcorn would be more nutritious and maintain eating qualities if it were made with healthy oil. And omega-9 canola oil supports the claims desired in microwave popcorn, that is, the absence of the bad fats and the presence of good fats. And so omega-9 oils are being used today in ready-to-eat and microwave popcorn renovation. Heart-healthy canola oil fits with the consumers choosing better-for-you snacks that fit with a healthy lifestyle. And omega-9 oil delivers on key popcorn attributes for flavor and for sensory qualities, and provides the shelf life to keep the products tasting first day fresh. So as the popcorn category continues to reinvent itself to fit with today's consumer snacking needs, omega-9 canola oil is to be a key ingredient in that renovation.
Great, thanks, Mary. And I will go ahead and hand it back over to Dave Dyziak to wrap it up. Dave?
Hey, thank you. So looking ahead, I think first maybe looking back a little bit, in the last 30 years, there's been a complete shift in attitude towards the role of fat in the diet and what kind of fat in the diet. So fat used to be bad. Fat is what made us fat. But we know today that that isn't true. And we've got very strong dietary guidance about getting healthy oils into the diet and making it a part of our dietary pattern, and with a focus on getting bad oils, saturated fats, solid fats, trans fats out of the diet. So I think, in looking then to the future, there are some important drivers in place that is really driving the food industry today. And so partial hydrogenated oils have, really their impact as really being a metabolic poison has been pretty well accepted, and resulting in the FDA removing a GRAS status for those oils. And so now that's driving change across the food industry, creating more demand for naturally stable oils. Food companies are after cleaner labels, so getting additives and things that aren't really part of the food package, trying to get those removed as much as they can. And these naturally stable oils offer a great solution because they can deliver the stability of other oils that that have to use things like TBHQ, and we can remove or prevent the need to have to do that. And improving nutrition panels on food is very important. Health certainly is the driver in the food industry today, and having a nutrition panel that can reflect low in saturated fats, trans fat free, high and healthy unsaturated fats is also a very important attribute. But probably the most important thing is just really having good alternatives and having them readily available. And so these new oils like Omega-9 can be produced at a very large scale today. And so they're productive, they're cost efficient to grow, they're a good source of return for farmers. There's a guaranteed market, and there's a reliable market. You're not dealing with a commodity. And so there's a very good supply chain attached to these new crop options. Next. So in looking at these oils too, they really fit across a spectrum of food applications. Healthy snacking is a really high-growing category today, and these oils fit very well into there. They offer good shelf life, great taste, healthier labels. The food service industry, I think this is the year we kind of had a crossover for the first time. We're eating more outside the house than inside the house. And so these commercial kitchens need good, healthy options, and these oils really serve as drop-in replacements, drop-in solutions to other alternatives. And in looking across the baking industry, looking at shortenings and spreads, and so taking an oil like Omega-9 and doing formulation work to blend it with things like palm oil, we can provide shortenings that are trans fat free, that have a much lower level of saturated fat, and still deliver on the required functionality. And to wrap up here is really the role of canola now in the North American food industry. And so over 40% of all the canola used by U.S. food comes from the high stability category, things like Omega-9. And the crop, 10 years ago was about half the size that it is today. And so it really has scaled up to meet this growing demand. And today, our program alone delivers over 1.5 billion pounds of oil into the industry. So it's a very good, large-scale option. And we see the category continuing to grow as costs become more efficient, and supply becomes more widely available, and as this continued driver around labels and nutrition panels, there's good options here in place today. And so the key thing is that through really good plant science, good plant breeding, having a good value chain, is that we really have an option that really can be scaled up to meet the large needs of the North American industry. And that's it. Thank you very much. We'd be happy to take any questions here.
I'll open up the floor for some questions. Feel free to submit them via the GoToMeeting panel, or if you'd like to unmute your phone, feel free to talk to us directly. Okay. Well, if there are no current questions, then I do want to thank everyone for their time today. Please do not hesitate to reach out to us directly in the future for any additional information related to Omega-9 Canola Oil. We thank you very much and hope everyone has a great day. Thank you again.